California.
What's up, Bears fans? Welcome back to another edition of the Willis Twin Towers podcast. First week of training camp in the books, guys. And we'll dig into that a little bit here tonight, as well as some of your other thoughts, any questions you guys have and whatnot. So just a quick reminder, as always, join us here in the chat with anything you want to discuss, any questions you have for us, anything you want us to get into, as well as please like the video, subscribe to this channel if you're not already, so we can continue to bring the content we do. It's not just us. There's lots of other great content here on the channel for you guys. So we appreciate that like, we appreciate that subscription, and we hope to see you guys every Friday night here on the Bar Room Live with us with the Willis Twin Towers. So getting started here, guys, there's a lot of stuff to dig into here from the week of training camp. There's been so much, obviously because they're right in the middle of things right now, there's a lot of coverage going on. So there's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of articles being written, there's a lot of talking heads discussing things. So obviously we don't all have a chance to see everything. So with that being said, we got to keep in mind that everybody's going to have different thoughts about different things. And what we're here to do is to just kind of, like I said at the beginning, we want to know what you guys think too. We want to know what your thoughts are. We want to have an idea of what you guys are seeing. We were lucky enough to have our executive producer Aldo as well as Greg Gabriel, who has the show on Mondays. Gabriel Talks Football here on Barroom Network. They went to a training camp practice together this week, so we got to have a little bit of their firsthand insight. We haven't heard Greg's point of view yet on this here on the network because their show is on Monday. But for those of you guys who have had a chance to listen to Bare Their Souls, you got a little bit of Aldo's take, and Aldo had some interesting things to say about it. So I'll probably talk a little bit about that later on as well. But what are your initial thoughts, Tim, about what we've seen throughout the week so far and the direction that this team is headed right now?
Excuse me, I almost choked for a second there. Random, I know.
Right.
Yeah, I'm good. My initial reaction, first of all, is that I never get tired of hearing Ben Johnson give a press conference. Like during the last 3 seasons, every week, twice a week, 3 times a week, or whatever it was. And after every game, you didn't even care to hear the press conference because you knew it was going to be the same old. Once again, more coach speak, more just what we saw is not at all what you're saying here. Like that's nothing at all like the game was, or nothing at all like what happened at practice, nothing at all. You know what I'm saying? He was never honest. Flus was never honest about anything, kept everything in house, or he attempted to himself. But the refreshing thing about Ben Johnson is that, number one, during his conferences this week, he had no problem telling the media that, hey, it wasn't good enough today. Could have been better. Wasn't good enough. Are we improving? Yes, but it's not good enough. How many times did we hear it's not good enough this week? There were a few times where he said, yeah, I had to take him off the field because I need to get the next offense in there. Caleb was responding well to the coaching and the way that I'm handling things or whatever. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, all of this, but just you kept hearing all the time it wasn't good enough. And this is the standard. Everybody needs to meet the standard. And he treats every player the same, whether it's your number 1 overall pick and your quarterback, Caleb Williams, or if it's a guy you're not even certain is going to make the roster this year.
Before you continue your point, let me just say, I don't know that he's necessarily – we got to go back to what Greg talks about every once in a while with like Bill Parcells, for instance. He used to say, I don't treat every player the same way because everybody is different. So we don't know that Ben is treating every different, but I see what you're saying. The whole point you're trying to make is he is being the same with every player as far as making sure that things are done the way they want them done. Everybody is getting the same treatment as far as the standard, okay? This is how it's supposed to look. Everybody needs to make it look this way. And if you don't, you're going to get your ass chewed out. So sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to make the point that we don't know that necessarily he's treating everybody the same way as far as coaching wise, as far as behind closed doors, the way they're working together with things. But as far as the getting things done the way they want them done on the field and making sure it's right, absolutely. Everybody's the same in that regard. You're going to get chewed out if it ain't right.
Well, let me apologize for the wording because I didn't mean like treated personally. I meant the standard, and I'm pretty sure I used the word standard.
I know you didn't. I just wanted to make it clear. That's right. The whole reason I interrupted you.
But that's what I'm saying is the standard is the standard. And whether you, like I said, whether you're Caleb Williams or whether you're a cut candidate or an undrafted rookie free agent coming in, you're expected to meet the standard, period. End of sentence, or you won't be here. And he even made that mention, I believe it was yesterday, about Luther Burden. I don't know if you guys heard this, but he was talking about Luther Burden, and he was straight up honest and said he's behind the 8 ball. He's got a long way to go. He's going to be behind everybody else because he missed all that time. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but you understand the point. You understand the gist of what I'm saying. And that's a situation where you would have heard Matt Eberflus with the coach speak of, well, he's doing all right. He's where he needs to be. He'll be fine by preseason game 1. He'll be fine by regular season week 1, yada, yada, yada. You wouldn't have got he's behind. He's straight up behind because he's missed time. It's going to take him time to get where he needs to be. He's not in the right position all the time. He doesn't know the offense the way he should yet. He's getting misaligned more often than he would be had he been here. You understand my point. He's not afraid to call guys out, and he's doing it with the media. He's telling the media in his press conferences, he's not afraid to be honest. And this is what I love. There's transparency. Isn't that the word that we preached all offseason and all last season and all the season before was transparency? And what was the first thing that Ben Johnson said he was going to do when he came to Chicago? One of the first things, I should say. One of the first things he said he was going to do was be transparent. Guys, he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. That is why I have so much confidence in where this thing is going to go. Because this is not... I don't even know what that's saying. I'm reading something, guys. Sorry, but this is not one of those cases where he says one thing and he's doing another. I have confidence this is going to go in the right direction because he's practicing what he preaches. And if the head coach practices what he preaches, do you think the players are going to follow suit? What is the quote from Remember the Titans? Attitude reflect leadership. This is the same concept here. Leadership from the coach down. Maybe that's why the leadership was so terrible last year with the captains, because we had no leadership from the head coach. And
well, there are 8 freaking captains.
Well, yeah, I don't even want to get into that. That's a whole other can. That's another can of worms. That's another. Let's not. I don't want to go too far down that road. But
well, I'm just saying, if your head coach feels the need to leave 8 guys as leaders on the team, he obviously don't feel that strong about his own damn leadership.
I was just going to say, between the 8 of them, he was hoping they would be a better leader than him. But again, like the 8 captains thing is a big part of that. Why they didn't? That's insanity to me. But the other part of this is the assistant coaches that Ben Johnson has brought in are phenomenal. Like they are the same way as Ben. They hold players to a certain standard, and it's not just the coordinators; it's the assistant coaches as well. As a matter of fact, Dennis Allen mentioned that in his press conference that the assistant coaches on the defense are doing and I think he meant the entire. I think he didn't just specify the defense. I think he said the entire team. All of the assistant coaches are doing a phenomenal job of coaching. And he mentioned in his press conference that Ben Johnson mentioned that he wanted coaches with him that were teachers. And that is exactly what these guys are, is they're phenomenal teachers. That came from Dennis Allen in his press conference. So this is a team-oriented team goal. Everybody is on the same page. There's a standard for not only the players, but for the coaches. And that is why this thing is going in the direction that it is. And hopefully we are heading on the right track. But my point in all of this is, and I say this every week, but The different vibe is such a great vibe. This is exactly what I've been hoping for. And every week I get more encouraged and I'm more excited. I'm waiting. I can't wait for the next Ben Johnson interview, the next Ben Johnson press conference. He is just, what's the word I'm looking for? Everybody wants to listen to him. Everybody wants to hear from him. I can't even think of the word that I want to use, but it's like euphoric. Everybody wants to hear it. Everybody wants to know what Ben Johnson's up to next. Everybody wants to know what the Bears are doing next. And it's not just Bears fans. It's the national media. Charismatic. Thank you, Aldo. I was having a brain fart.
Yeah.
He is absolutely charismatic. And the national media wants a piece of this. This week alone, Bleacher Report spent a day at Hallis Hall. NFL Network spent a day at Hallis Hall. Albert Breer was there for a day. All of the national media wants a piece of the Chicago Bears right now. And it's not just because they're the Bears and they're a historic franchise or the historic franchise. It's because of what is going on right now, what they're doing right now, how they're developing right now, the direction the team is headed right now. This is a new era we're not used to seeing. This is something totally different. And because of that, that's why everybody wants to be there. That's why everybody wants to report on it. Ben Johnson might be the most popular head coach in the NFL right now. And he's never even won a game as a head coach. He's never coached a game as a head coach. But his resume spoke for itself in Detroit. The way that he's handled business thus far has spoken for itself. And the players are speaking in favor of him. And that is all that I need to know to have the hope and the encouragement that I have right now to see what direction this team goes. But Jeff, I don't know if you've heard, and I know I mentioned that about Luther Burden, but there's also reports right now that Luther Burden is tearing it up right now this week. He has been phenomenal in practice. I watched a few highlight clips of him. He's looked great. He's looked really, really good. I saw he scored a touchdown, I believe, on one play where he made a good catch, thought he was getting tackled, and he's back on his feet and he's gone.
There was one play. Yeah, I've heard the same thing that Burden looks good. It was almost like a complete 180. You hear Ben in that presser talking about, he looks a little behind right now. I mean, it's almost like the very next day he was like killing camp. So
yes, I think
it's just one of those things where it's like the guy is immensely talented and he's drawn a lot of comparisons to DJ. What do you want to say?
1 second before you go on, and that you just made me think of something real quick. Do you think Ben Johnson might have done that on purpose? Do you think maybe he knew that he was going to get something more?
It's calculated. It's all calculated.
It is so calculated. And again, I'm just compiling more reasons to love this guy.
Well, the whole point I was trying to make was, there was a clip that I saw from camp, and I can't remember. I think the Bears posted it. So it was a shot of Burden making a catch. And I think Carl, Diane's My podcast, if you guys know who I'm talking about. Carl is on the show here all the time, listens in. He's actually been on the podcast with us before, Socialist Carl. But in any case, Carl was...
hey, you guys keep talking about Socialist Carl and Karl Marx and all that. You know what I think of? I think of Jimmy Neutron. Carl! That's the old... Every time, that's what I think of. Every single time.
But anyways, Carl had posted... he'd asked the Bears to post it. He actually posted video himself to the Bears in reply to the Bears video to please post this this highlight or this catch from Luther Burden. And it was a different angle, but sure enough, the Bears later on posted the same clip from a different angle from obviously their media team had captured it on video. And it was Tyson Bagent making the throw. And I'm not sure 100% if he was trying to back shoulder him or if it was just a throw that was behind him. It kind of, to me, looked like just a little bit of an off throw, but Burden makes a phenomenal catch on him, just turns completely around because he's running one way and he has to turn completely around the other way to make the catch on the ball. It's highly contested. The DB is right over top of him. He hauls it in, makes a really nice catch and spins the ball on the ground after catching it on the sideline there. So you could tell he was amped up about it. I do think he's going to be a nice little piece here. And I think he might be more productive right away than we might have thought originally. He's just a guy you want to get the ball in his hands, which reminds me of another thing. I mentioned a few minutes ago that he's kind of drawn a lot of comparisons to DJ. Well, I'm sure you guys have seen this week in practice, there were clips of DJ lining up in the backfield. And I'm not going to be surprised to see maybe Luther Burden get some looks like that too. I just think DJ, they're going to try to find a way to get the ball in his hands regardless. And Ben was talking about it. You want to try to get your best guys on the field the best way you can. So if there's a situation where you feel like, we're better off having 12 personnel, like our 2 tight ends and maybe 3 receivers also, and as opposed to having that running back there, I want to get DJ Moore back there instead of Swift or Mononga or whoever. That might be the route they take. And not to mention they could use it on early downs too, maybe in like a Deebo Samuel kind of role like the Niners used to do. Because we've seen DJ Moore with the rock in his hands. The guy makes shit happen. So, G2K, that's a good question. Could Burden be better than Rome eventually? It's tough to say. They're so different.
They're different. Can I put it this way? It's kind of like Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet, the 2 tight end positions.
I would say
because they're both receivers, but they're different types of receivers. They have different flavors.
Yes, but I would say Cole's ceiling is significantly lower than Colston's. Loveland's ceiling is extremely high, whereas
but it depends.
Rome, it's not that much.
Talking about.
I would say Burden is more electric and Burden is more athletic than Rome altogether and all around. Better speed and agility, yes, but Rome for his size is incredibly gifted in that department as well. So I don't know. He's got a really high ceiling because he's a guy who can go up and get the football too in ways that Burden may not necessarily be able to. I don't want to say that for sure because he's shown the ability to, have very strong hands as well. But I do think that J2K, it's a really good question. I don't know, to be honest with you. It's a really tough question for me to answer because as far as pure upside, I do think Burden's might be slightly higher. It's just Rome is so polished as far as a pure receiver is concerned and the ability, like I said, the high point the football. And he's also he's a separator. He can beat people vertically. He can do just about everything you want a receiver to do. So it's hard for me to answer that. It's a really good question. What do you think, Tim?
Well, let me ask you this. Let's erase the fact that Rome played for the Bears last year and let's take him back to his last season at Washington. When he was coming out of the draft and when Luther Burden were coming out of the draft, would you be answering this question the same way? Or would you be saying, no question that Rome Odunze is going to have the better career?
Well, to be fair to Burden, he was expected to go in the first round. There's a lot of people who thought he could even go in the top 10, especially early on in the process. Now,
but there was no question that Rome was going in the top 10. There was no doubt that he was going to go in the top 10.
Well, to be fair to Burden as well, his quarterback play was so terrible his last year at Missouri, whereas Rome Odunze had Michael Penix throwing to him. So, I mean, it's just a different situation there as well, where Rome was able to have the kind of productivity that Burden was not able to in his last year at Missouri, due mainly, in my opinion, and most people would probably agree with this, because of the poor quarterback play there. But I'm not disagreeing with you, to be fair, okay? Looking at where they were as prospects, Rome was, I think most people would agree that Rome was the better prospect overall, but I still think ceiling-wise, it's hard to say. Like I said, Rome is so polished. That's a big part of why he was such a high-rated prospect, because of that reason. But I don't know. It's a good question, and let's just say this. We're lucky to have 2 guys that have that kind of ability and that kind of upside. This is a great point, although Luther Burden is known for his playmaking ability, versatility, and strong run after the catch. Rome Odunze is known for his size, speed, route running, and strong hands, making him a potential future star. So I agree. And really, both guys could be potential future stars. J2K says if you flip Burden's last 2 years, he would have gone much higher. And I completely agree with that. He probably goes in the first round.
Sure.
As his junior year was the senior year, and then he progresses into the year he had as a junior. As a senior, if you look at it that way, yeah, I think that's a very good point. So would he have gone top 10? I don't know. But I think he's for sure a first-round pick in that scenario, yeah. So I think it's an interesting point. It really is, and that's something to think about. I think they're both going to be very, very big-time pieces and important pieces to this offense for a very long time, and the goal is to get both those guys extended when the time comes. So
I think they look at him, like Luther Burden, as almost like a DJ Moore replacement in time as DJ ages, and he won't be able to have the same run after the catch.
DJ's getting older, too. I mean, they've got him under contract right now, and a decent size contract. Yeah, DJ Moore, obviously. But the point here is that, yeah, I mean, you would see that as like a potential replacement, because eventually, you're not going to be able to pay DJ forever. He's going to get to the wrong side of 30, and there's going to come a point in time where his play is going to dip a little bit. And even if it doesn't, you've got Burden there. Do you really want to pay DJ another contract? You basically paid him 2 already because you paid him a big contract that Carolina gave him, and then you extended him to your own contract. So now you didn't pay that entire first contract in full because of the extension, but you guys get the gist here, right? So my point is do you want to hand him out another contract? And what is it? I think the end of his contract is like 6 years or something.
He's got 5 years left. He's got 5 left.
Years. So I was somewhere in between. But the whole point, yes. Vizo says that Bird will get you to the red zone and Dunze will get you into the end zone. That's a good point. Bird's a guy who gets the run after the catch. Same thing with DJ. You know, those guys that get you some big chunk yards, but they can score too from out there. But again, when you get him in the red zone, the guy you're wanting to target in the red zone is a Dunze with that size. Cole Kmet, Colston Loveland, same thing. Those guys are going to get a lot of red zone touches, I think. But I think those other guys will too, because Ben's going to get so creative down there. So I think they'll find. I mean,
I foresee so much 12 personnel in the red zone with Rome Odunze out there. How are you going to stop that? How are you going to stop one of those guys from scoring?
Very hard to do. Especially if, like I said, like I was talking about earlier, if they're getting creative by putting DJ more in the backfield. Situations like, what are we doing? Are we running the football? Are we throwing the football? Are we doing some kind of?
DJ's been throwing too.
And that's what I'm saying. Are we going to run some kind of trick play with DJ back there? Are we? What are we looking at? Are we going to do something with an offensive lineman?
Baby.
You're probably not going to do that with all those weapons out there, but you guys get what I'm saying. So there's so many different scenarios that you can play out from 12 in the red zone, to me, with the personnel that the Bears have, that I think that you're going to see that a lot. I totally agree with that, Tim. I think it was on Bear Their Souls this week that I was talking about that in the chat also. But yeah, 100%. So a couple more things from training camp I want to talk about, because I do want to address what's kind of the quote unquote elephant in the room with the Micah Parsons demand for a trade. I want to talk about that a little bit later because it is kind of relevant, I think, to us. But talking some more about training camp here, there's a few things I wanted to get into a little bit more. If you guys didn't know, Shamar Turner sprained his ankle. We don't know when he's going to be back for sure. He's been out pretty much all week from what I understand. I think he's practiced all week this week. So I don't know when he's going to be back. We know with sprained ankles, those are kind of always, you never really know with those. They can linger, and especially with like a high ankle sprain, they can kind of last a little while. So I think we're looking at something here where it's potentially maybe not back until closer to the start of the season. He may even miss the start. We'll have to wait and see. But luckily, the defensive line has pretty good depth. But it would have been nice to see him in there and part of the rotation right away. So hopefully that will still be the case. But also, there are some clips we've got from both press conferences, and there was an interview that Caleb did. And I want to show that one first because Caleb was doing an interview, and I can't remember for life of me now where exactly it was on. You guys will see it on the video here. But he was talking about Ben Johnson and coming in and how he's learning the offense and whatnot. So, Aldo, if you don't mind playing this clip, it's from ESPN. Thank you for showing that in the chat there. But if you don't mind playing that clip for us, we'll kind of dig into it afterwards.
You know, we were out there and, you know, we were marching down the field, and then, you know, the headset started going out on me, and I got kind of frustrated, and Ben came over to me after, and, you know, he was like, have a few plays in mind, you know, if that ever happens. And, you know, that's more of accountability to me and to this team, and having a few plays that, you know, if the clock's running down, the headset goes out, or, you know, it's you know, spiking or something, you can't hear the play call. It's have a few plays, go out there and, you know, don't go palms up and, you know, complain and things like that.
Okay, so that was a different part of the clip, obviously, from what I was mentioning earlier, but that's a relevant piece here too, because in practice, obviously, Ben mentioned to him, like, hey, be ready for a scenario like that when you're in a game. Like, if your headset does go out, be prepared to have some stuff you like to go to. And I think that's important to know. I mean, if he didn't have that in his mind before and now he does, and I think all great quarterbacks, if you think about the Peyton Mannings, the Joe Montanas, the Tom Bradys, I'm sure they had scenarios in their heads, and, you know, in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl, where they might have had a situation where if something like that were to happen, they had an idea of something they like to go to and something they wanted to run, you know, and that they would have just taken control there and done it. And so I think it's important that Ben let him know, hey, you have that authority to do so. Like, if something happens and we can't communicate and we got to get a playoff, just go to something that you like and you think is going to work here. And that's going to be part of the growing process too. He's probably going to, he may call some stuff in a situation where it doesn't work, or there's going to be plenty of times where he doesn't check out of a play that he probably should, throughout the season, but he's going to learn from those things. So, and I agree with you, King. I mean, there's so many people that are actively rooting against him that I will never understand either. I mean, a lot of it is just, a lot of them are like Tyson Bagent apologists that really want the kid to start, which, look, I understand if you like Bagent, you want the kid to start, but there's no reason to root against the guy who's the starter right now. That makes absolutely no sense. It would take him failing and your team to not play well for them to make a change there. And it's not going to happen right away. It's, they're committed to this kid. He was the number 1 overall pick. So I don't know why you would want failure from him. It makes absolutely no sense to me. To me, that shows like a total lack of reasoning whatsoever, because you're not thinking straight. If you think that you want your team to fail in order for another guy to come in, because that, again, like I said, the team is not just going to move on from him. It's going to take a lot of failure from them to move on from the number 1 overall pick. And it ain't going to happen right away. So let's just give him a damn chance. And he's so talented. Why would we not want to see that flourish? Why would you not? Vizo, I agree with you too. My only concern with Caleb was his deep ball, but he seemed to hit it consistently the last practice. That's the hope, right? I mean, that was the one thing he missed so much on last year that's like, man, I can't believe there's, obviously when you come into the NFL, right, there's a lot of learning curve. There's things that most quarterbacks in college are not expected to do that you're going to have to do once you get to the league, processing things at the line of scrimmage and whatnot, right? Getting to the team in the right alignments, motions and shifts, all those things. Whereas, you're going to expect to see some growing pains there. So you're not really surprised to see that from Caleb in year 1. But the long ball, something he did so consistently well in college and he missed on so much last year. Yeah, that was a concern for me too, Vizo. So I am encouraged to see that he's doing that better. And King, I agree to an extent too. The ability to be able to now step into his throws because he's not under constant duress is a big part of it too. I think the way we've seen the offensive line play in some of these clips from practice has been pretty impressive too. But also, we've also heard that Dennis Allen has done a pretty good job of getting pressure on the offensive line as well with the guys that we have on defense. So that was another question that we had. Could we consistently get some pressure? So I think it's overall optimistic, but that kind of brings me to another clip that we had from Ben that he was talking about Caleb and his growth from, and this was, I think it was on Tuesday's practice, if I'm not mistaken. So if you don't mind playing that clip, Aldo, we'll get into that one as well.
When it comes to Caleb mastering the motions and shifts, what stage is he at right now, and how do you kind of contextualize what the next step for him is in that regard?
Yeah, I probably just see growth. He is so much more comfortable right now. Even yesterday, the walkthrough yesterday, just in terms of moving around. We go from gun to under to. The tight ends are moving, the receivers are moving. We're adding a few more every single day, and his process is really clean right now. I'm talking about how he's preparing. I'm really pleased with it. He's doing the work behind the scenes that no one else is seeing, and we're starting to see the dividends being paid from it.
One quick point, real quick. That dude looks so exhausted. You could see the bags under his eyes, right? Like
I mentioned that last week.
Slept in weeks. Probably months now.
Which, that kind of it brings me. And by the way, thank you, Aldo, for getting those graphics on the screen with that as well. And he provided the sources of those clips as well from YouTube or from X, the people who provided those. So that was really cool there, Aldo. Thank you for doing that. But the whole point of what I wanted to make here, going back to what I was saying earlier with Caleb and his growth and things you expect a rookie quarterback to go through. It was encouraging to hear Ben say those things. I mean, where he's at now, the process or the progress he's made with his processing, with his getting up to the line of scrimmage, things are looking clean. That's encouraging to me because I remember just a couple months ago when we were talking about OTAs where he was saying, that's not where we want it to be yet. And it doesn't look all that great right now. Where now he's saying I like how clean it sounds. So if you guys remember, I think it was an OTAs where he pulled the offense off the field because when they came out of the huddle wasn't right. He didn't like the way they were coming out of the huddle, that it didn't sound right. So the fact that this, he's not discouraged by that now, and he's openly saying, hey, I like the progress we've made here, that it's obviously not perfect, but we've come a long way. That is encouraging to me. So, I think that it's one of those things where, again, this is what we've talked about time and time again now. It just seems different. It just seems different with this guy, with this coaching staff. It seems like they're on the right track with this team, that they're going to get the best out of everybody. Who was it that got yanked out of practice? I mean, obviously Burden was one of them. He yelled at Burden and got on him a bunch at practice for a play. And then obviously, he had that really good last couple of days. But he's had a tendency to get on some guys, and he's not afraid to show them, like, this is what we need from you, and it's looking like it's bringing the best out of them. So I like to see that. I'm not afraid of a coach who wants his guys to be accountable. This is what everybody asked for. We've said it time and time again. Everybody's been asking for this between the players and the fans. We want a guy who's going to be hold these guys accountable and who's going to coach them hard, and we're seeing it from the entire coaching staff. So, King says that he's holding the team accountable with all aspects of the game. Practice now and fail to be perfect, win later. Exactly. Practice is where you do fail. Practice is where you learn. Practice is where we figure shit out, right? So when we go into a game situation, we've practiced that play that we're going to run umpteen times to where we've got it right, and there's no reason we shouldn't be able to execute it at a high level in the game. Now, obviously, that doesn't always come to fruition because of either things you don't expect from the defense, or the defense just executes better than you do, or whatever the case may be. It's not always going to go the way you expect it to, but that's why you practice it that way, because you expect it to be executed that way in a game. So I don't know. Like I said, I like the direction it's in, and we've seen a lot of good things from camp. A lot to look forward to. Looks like a lot of guys are being used in different ways. I mentioned DJ Moore earlier. It looks like he's going to get the ball a lot this year. They're going to find ways to use him. Same with Luther Burden. He's been a force in practice the last couple of days. He's just been making really nice plays all over the place. So, and we've heard a lot throughout most of the reporters through training camp. I've seen several reporters say that Roma Dunze has shined throughout camp. So I think we're going to see, like I said, a lot of, and obviously Colston Loveland's another one too. I almost forgot about him. And we've seen a lot from him the last week or so, where he's been getting the ball a lot and looking really good doing so. So like I said, I mean, a lot to look forward to here. Obviously, it's going to have to translate into games, but the fact we're seeing some of this stuff happen with pads on, and it looks good, both from the offensive line, the defensive line, the running backs, I like to see that. So is there anything you want to say about that, Tim, before we move on to that Micah Parsons deal? Because like I said, I kind of want to get into this. It reminds me a lot of a situation that the Bears had back in 2018.
I would say the crazy thing about it is, I think the Bears are going to have 3 1,000-yard receivers this year. I do.
That's asking a lot. But that would be nice.
I know it's asking for a lot, but I don't know who the guy's going to be. Like, most days I think it's DJ, and then other days I'm like, well, maybe it's going to be Rome. I don't think it's going to be Luther Burden year one, but like, I mean, I don't know. Like, they're giving DJ all these different other opportunities as well. So I think he's going to be the dynamic player that they give the ball to all the time and see what he can do with it. But I think their number one receiver is going to be Rome. I just do. And I don't know where it's going to go, but I really think there's going to be 3,000-yard receivers. But the thing is, I think it's going to be DJ and Rome are 1 and 2. Who's going to be the third? It could be Colston Loveland for all we know. Maybe it's not Luther Burden that's going to get 1,000 yards. Maybe Colston Loveland does it. Maybe Cole Kmet does it this year. I don't know. I can tell you this much. Cole Kmet's going to be open a lot more often than people think. Like, having Colston Loveland here now, I don't think everybody thinks Colston Loveland's going to all of a sudden become like the number one receiving target tight end, and Cole Kmet's going to go to the wayside and he's just going to block. That's not going to be the case. Cole Kmet is still going to be a very vital part of the passing game, whether people see that or not. Ben Johnson was just raving about Cole Kmet. I think it was yesterday. Maybe it was Wednesday. Raving about Cole Kmet and how the word that he used was he's a unicorn, talking about Cole Kmet and his ability as a receiver too. So I don't know. I just think there are so many weapons, and I have a hard time thinking that we're not going to have 3,000-yard receivers. I know it sounds crazy, but is it really all that crazy? I mean, it's hard to say right now because we don't know, but I also don't see a scenario where Caleb doesn't throw for 4,000. I think this is finally going to be the year it's going to happen.
Well, I hope he does. He should.
He should. Now, if he throws for 3,900 and
protection is going to be part of that too.
absolutely, protection is going to be a huge part of it. And weather in Chicago is also going to play a huge factor into that. It just will. So, but again, like he was 500 yards away last year, and that was having games where he threw for like nothing. Didn't he throw for like 60 yards one game or something outrageous like that? Like that's going to change this year. I mean,
although that's a really good point. Although he's going to have a shitload of yak yards for passing yards. At 3,000 of his 4,000 is what Aldo says, but that could very well be the case. I mean, look at all these weapons they have that are dynamic with the football in their hands. We obviously talk about DJ Moore and Luther Burden, but let's not forget, you get the ball in DeAndre Swift's hands, that motherfucker can move with the ball too now. I mean, like I said, we've questioned many times in the past about his ability to hit the hole where he should at all times as far as being handed the ball off and going where he should.
You give that guy any space at all. Goodbye.
You give him some blocking, he's dynamic, man. You get him one-on-one with a defender in open space, see ya. And he ain't
now I'm talking about 3,000-yard receivers. What if we had 500-yard receivers? 5 players that reach 500 receiving yards. I could 100% see that. And I'm talking, between DJ,
like I said,
Rome, Cole, Luther Burden, Colson Loveland, DeAndre Swift, maybe we get 6 500-yard receivers. You get a 500-yard season, and you get a 500. I mean, everybody's getting a 500-yard season here. Who knows? That'd be amazing. Right, Carl?
Well, there was a good point here that was made by Cliff saying, because you were talking about Kmet, that he's probably going to be covered by the 4th, 5th best defender, in that situation, which, I mean, it may be Cole, it may be somebody else in that scenario, but the whole point is there's so many weapons now that, as I mentioned before, if the protection holds up, it's going to be awfully hard to defend everybody now. I mean, there aren't very many teams that have 4 or 5 guys that can defend all those guys that the Bears have to theoretically deploy here. Now, again, we always talk about this is on paper. I mean, it's got to be seen on game day. But I mean, look, guy like Ben Johnson with that track record, how can we not be optimistic about this now? There's a reason for it. So I think that we're on the right track here, which kind of brings us right into this next segue here with this news that we all heard about today. And I see you guys making great points here in the chat about it. I mean, really good points here about Micah Parsons. And, obviously demanding that trade wasn't a demand, but he asked for a trade out of Dallas. And obviously, you can debate semantics, whether a demand is the same as asking out, but whatever. The whole point is he wants out. So there was a long, drawn out, he typed a long, I don't know if you want to call it a speech. The notes section of his phone, he had a long thing to say, posted it on his X account, basically about how he's tried many times, that he's tried to make something work with the Cowboys. He wanted to be there, that basically ownership without good faith went out of their way to try to negotiate with Parsons without his agent there. Basically, something happened where they asked him to come in to talk about leadership for the following season, like a leadership meeting. And then they proceeded to talk about contract matters with him without his agent present. And he was, he entertained it for a minute there, and they talked about some things, and they were under the impression that like they had something together. He said, well, I'll talk to my agent. He'll come back to you guys with it or whatever. Right. So basically what happened was that didn't happen. They never really heard anything back. And so when the agent tried to discuss with them contract matters, they didn't want nothing to do with it. And they won't engage with his agent. So it's basically them trying to make it work for themselves where to me, I think it's always a publicity thing with the Cowboys. I think it's always them trying to get their name out there to try to draw attention to themselves for whether it be revenue or whatever the case may be, which thank you, Scrolls, when the sun's out, I bring the guns out. He says, I don't know if I got guns, but it was definitely warm out today. So I was out in the tank top, but in any case, yeah, it's, one of those things where that's kind of what what do you think, Tim? I kind of divulged my initial thoughts on this, but I just think that like when you get a guy like this who wants out, a situation like this where it could cost you some draft picks, even if the price is steep, you must at least entertain it. We're talking about one of the most premier defenders in the entire league. probably the most dynamic pass rusher in the entire league. And thank you, Aldo, for this graphic. He's very young. He's only 26 years old, 52 and a half sacks in 4 years, guys. I mean, that is insane production. That's a guy who year in and year out, double-digit sacks, and he's not your typical prototype defensive end. This is just a guy who's incredibly versatile. You can put him all over the place, and he's going to find a way to get production rushing the passer. Aldo mentions on the screen here, Micah Parsons joins Reggie White as the only two players with at least 12 sacks in each of his first 4 years, which that should tell you guys enough right there. Anybody who doesn't have this guy should want him on their team and should be at least engaging with the Cowboys, talking about, hey, what would it look like to get this guy? All right, because we'll talk with him. We'll discuss a contract with him. If you guys don't want to, I'd be happy to make him the highest paid player on my team. That's the biggest thing I don't understand. It's like, you get a guy like this, okay, Micah Parsons is clearly one of the top 5 players in the game, if you ask me, outside of like quarterbacks, obviously. But outside of quarterbacks, to me, he's one of the top 5 players in the entire game. If you draft and develop this guy yourself to play on your team, why on earth would you not want to pay him top dollar early once he's eligible for an extension to make him your guy for the future? Because the price is only going to go up. And you want to have good faith with both him and future guys who are looking to get contracts with your team. Now, Vizo, I understand your point here too. I'd rather draft a Micah Parsons and trade for one. But how hard is that to do? Again, how many Micah Parsons are there in the league? This guy is a generational type player. There is nobody in the league that is like him as far as a pure physical standpoint. There is nobody with his combination of athleticism, twitch, size, strength, all the above as a pass rusher, okay? There's nobody like him. Now, there's other great pass rushers in the league, and you might even argue that there's ones that are better than him, like maybe a Myles Garrett, but they're totally different skill sets. You don't find a guy like a Micah Parsons every year. You don't find a guy like a Micah Parsons every 10 years. It's it's like a once-in-a-generation type player, as I said. So I'd rather draft one too. But how are you going to be able to do that is the whole point. Are you going to be able to find a guy like that? So that's why I say at least entertain it. That's where we kind of get into price. So before I get into like price point, because I do want to dig into that, that's something that I have my opinions on that. And I want to know what you guys think too. What are your initial thoughts on this whole thing, Tim? And answer Calvin's question, because this is a great one. Are we ready for a trade like this right now?
That's actually a really good question, because that's the first thing I'm thinking of. This situation reminds me a lot of 2018 and the position the Bears were in then. They brought in Khalil Mack thinking all they were was a dominant pass rusher away from being a Super Bowl contender. Lo and behold, they didn't have the quarterback that they thought they did, but that's another day and another age. Now, are the Bears now in a similar position to the 2018 team? The difference now is they do have the quarterback. Are they in a position now that...
Well, they thought they had the quarterback then, too. That's the point.
That's what I just said. That's what I was saying. They thought they did, but they didn't. The difference now is, are they in that same position now? Are they a pass rusher away from a Super Bowl contender, or do they need a little bit more to get to that point? Would it be wise to make a trade like that this year, or would it be wasteful for us to go give up top capital in order to bring him in?
Well, that kind of reminds me, Tim, before you continue, speaking of the 2018 situation, Kyle Long, who was obviously there at the time, kind of at the tail end, but it reminded him, he tweeted about earlier of this certain situation with a Khalil Mack. He tweeted, as a former Bear, this is where my mind immediately goes when I hear Micah Parsons may be available with little to no time remaining in the offseason. And obviously, if you guys don't remember, Khalil Mack was traded to the Bears, I think it was right before week 1. I don't even know if the preseason, if there was any time left in the preseason. I think it was pretty much all over with. So
it was over.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that he came in right before the first game. So
it was. He got there the day before the first game.
Well, barely. I see what you're saying too. When you hear people talk about, we want to trade for anybody that comes available. Myles Garrett, T.J. Watt, Parsons, Trey Hendrickson. I see what you're saying. You want to develop a draft and develop a guy. Absolutely. My whole point here is I just feel like this situation is a bit different. He has went out of his way to ask out. They've had bad faith negotiations. Again, this is a once in a generation type player. Trey Hendrickson's really good pass rusher. Don't get me wrong. TJ Watt, another really good pass rusher. Are they once in a generation type athlete, type body type?
Hendrickson's also not 26 years old. Hendrickson's on the wrong side.
You got to consider this is a guy who you don't see every day. These kind of players don't grow on trees. I mean, this is somebody where you can get so creative with. Can you imagine Dennis Allen deploying Micah Parsons and the Bears defense? Holy shit. He probably would have loved to have a guy like that in New Orleans in his time there. I mean, it's like, I can only imagine the kind of things that Dennis Allen would do. And I think about Matt Eberflus trying to deploy him out there. I don't think he'd have a clue how to use him there. So I just think it's one of those things where I see what you're saying, Bear Lee, but he's just one of those guys where you got to at least explore it. And obviously the cost is going to be a big part of it. And like I said, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but go ahead and finish your point, Tim, before we kind of dig more into that.
I think the Bears roster right now, as compared to 2018, this might be actually a little bit better of a roster. And it's a similar situation. First-year head coach, offensive head coach, defense is on the rise, very established defensive coordinators. I mean, it's like on repeat. But I tend to agree with everybody in the chat that's saying they would rather draft one. Now, I agree with Jeff. Generational players don't come every day. There's a reason you're not seeing Micah Parsons every year in the draft because they don't exist.
Thing too. Before you continue, it's another thing too, is like, if we expect the Bears to continue to progress and become a good team, when do we expect them to have a top 10 pick to be able to get a kind of pass rusher like that who's going to be in that area? I mean, how many times do we see pass rushers who become some of the best in the league who are drafted outside of the top 10? The best ones in the league are typically drafted in the top area.
Yeah.
I mean, you have
At
your
this point, the Bears would have to
obviously
trade up to get into the top 10, in my opinion. If the season goes the way that it should, they would have to trade to get into the top 10. So if you have to give up draft capital to go up to get a player that you don't even know is going to pan out to be a Micah Parsons, wouldn't you rather give the extra capital to get a Micah Parsons? Now, I'm not advocating for or against getting Micah Parsons. I also think that every time a player becomes available, everybody wants to trade for him. It happens, and I agree with Barely about that. That 100% happens. Now, do I think that the Bears make a deal for Micah Parsons? No. And there's two reasons. One, I do think that they're in a position that they would be very, very close to Super Bowl contender if they had a pass rusher like Micah Parsons. I agree. I think they could be in the conversation. Do I think it's this year? No. Even with him, I don't think so. Number two, they can't afford Micah. I'm sorry, I never gave you my first point. That was why it would work. I do think that they could be there, but I think this is going to take time with this team to iron everything out, and it's not all going to happen in 1 year. So I don't think the Super Bowl window is this year anyway. Number two, and the capital you'd have to give up is outrageous. You're going to have to give up a minimum of 2 first-round picks for a guy who, unless you extend him when you trade for him, you're not going to sign him probably. Number two, and this is the big part, the Bears cannot afford to bring in Micah Parsons right now. They can't afford to bring him in this year. They can't afford to bring him in next year, and they can't afford to bring him in the year after that, as of now, unless they make some cuts, unless they adjust their current contracts. Can it be done? Yes. Is it likely? No, because you'd have to move around a lot of contract money. You'd have to make a lot of signing bonuses, and there's only so much wiggle room you can get. Yes, it's very fluid, and you're able to make adjustments to the salary cap, no question. But they brought on a lot of new contracts and a lot of new money this year. And let's not forget, if you sign Micah Parsons now, you have 3 years to, really 2 years till you have to extend Caleb Williams. 2 years till you have to extend Rome. 3 years till you'd have to extend Trapillo, or 2 for Amagaji if you have a left tackle, which hopefully we have the left tackle that we need to extend. But there's a lot of money that's going to be coming out. You can't afford, in my opinion, right now, to bring in a Micah Parsons. Now, that's my opinion. But don't take it from me. I talked to Greg Gabriel today, guys. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you exactly what he told me. I asked him if he thought this was even a possibility, not for the Bears, but I asked him if the Bears, or not the Bears, if the Cowboys would even consider trading him, or if this is another Trey Hendrickson situation where he wants to trade, but there's no chance the Bengals are going to trade him. And Greg's words to me were almost, I think it's verbatim, I look in a minute, but I don't think there's any chance that he gets traded. I don't think.
Well, I think most people would agree with that because this is Dallas doing their game that they do. They wait to the last freaking minute to pay their guys and then to pay them as much as humanly possible. They end up getting their guy in the long run, but it's like they had to run through fucking hoops to make it happen. And the problem with it is like I told you guys before, I really think it's just them trying to get publicity, them trying to make sure that they're on the radar at all times like they do in the offseason here. But it's just stupid. It doesn't make any sense to me. Scroll says that personalities like Parsons don't mix well with culture changes. I already wouldn't mind trading DJ and Jalen because of their diva energy, not adding another one. You know, I see where you're coming from, Scrolls. I do, but for one, I don't want to make any kind of assumptions about Parsons because I don't know. I'm not a Cowboys fan. I don't listen to their, I don't read their articles and listen to what the reporters have to say and stuff. So I don't know what kind of energy he really gives off over there. I know that from what I've seen from their fans that talk about him on Twitter, they don't want to lose him. They're very intent on keeping Parsons there, and most people are very intent on keeping Parsons there. But I was just going to say, what you just said, Aldo, is perfect. You got to trust that the coaching staff can overcome players with negative energy. And I feel like that the staff has done a very good job. The Ryan Poles' staff, I should say, the executive regime, has done a really good job of bringing in players throughout the rest of the roster who have really good, who have good culture, who have good, who love football enough to where they're going to do things the right way, to where it's going to look right to everybody else. And like I said, the coaching staff, you expect them to hold everybody accountable the same way. And if they're going to do that with all these other guys, I would expect them to do it with Micah Parsons as well if they brought him in. So, and like I said, Dennis Allen, he ain't going to take no shit from no one, and he's going to make sure he gets the best out of them. And he would make Micah Parsons an absolute freaking menace on this defense, dude. Menace. So that's the biggest. It's all about on field to me when we talk about this. I understand that logistic there, Scrolls. I really do, because if he ends up being a locker room cancer, that's obviously a problem. And it didn't work out very well with some others in the past, but this is a guy who could literally come in and transform your defense to make them from very good to absolutely elite level overnight. Okay. Much like Khalil Mack did, and maybe even better than that defense was. So, I agree with what you guys are all saying here. King says he's 50-50 on Parsons only because of the draft capital it'll cost. At the same time, the team is relatively young, so I just don't know. I tend to agree with that, and here's why I said, but here's the thing about with draft capital. Let's kind of dig into this a little bit, like cost-wise. So I think it was J2K asked, without getting into the weeds of a trade, would you trade 2 first-round picks plus player or more picks for Parsons? I would say this. I can't remember who it was that it was a big national reporter. I can't remember if it was Schefter or if it was Rappaport or who. They posted that it would take at least a first-round pick to make something like that happen. So obviously that's a starting point. I think they would get a lot more than just a first-round pick, but let's just look at it from the Bears' perspective, okay? Because that's obviously what we're concerned about here. So let's think about cost for a minute here. First of all, would I trade 2 first-round picks and more for him? Probably not. I don't think that Ryan Poles would do that either, because this is a guy that has been very proactive about making sure he doesn't mortgage his future away in the past several years. Matter of fact, he's put his future in a much better situation than any GM that the Bears have had in a long time has done. So Cliff says Parsons will cost so much every year that big paycheck will handicap the team in other areas. So look, I don't disagree with that. So here's where you got to kind of get creative if you're talking about a trade here, right? So let me just hypothesize a little bit here, and you guys tell me what you think about this. I think you would absolutely have, and although this is a hypothetical trade scenario here that he's got on the screen, he says Tremaine Edmonds, Tyreek Stevenson, and a 2026 first for Parsons in a 4th. I think that's kind of a decent starting point there. I think what you're looking at is you definitely have to try to get rid of both some salary in order to make this happen, because you do have to re-sign to a long-term deal and make something happen as far as, making it work with the salary cap. But also, you have to think about how much money you have invested into your defensive line also. So now you're going to have Grady Jarrett, who's making big money. You're going to have Odangbo, who just made $16 million a year. You just signed. You got Montez Sweat, who's making big money every year. You really want to sign a third guy for probably going to make closer to $40 million a year if you bring in Micah Parsons in a trade. You really want to have that much money invested into your defensive line. I mean, obviously, you want your defensive line to be really good, but do you want to put that kind of money into it? Is that gonna handicap you? So you think about it like this. You want to, like I said, try to shed some salary in a scenario like that. That's why Aldo mentioned Tremaine Edmonds, who's making pretty good money. But again, he's only got 1 year left on his deal. I think the reason it could potentially match up well with the Bears is because they obviously have players on his defense who have played for Matt Eberflus, who's now with the Cowboys. So if the Cowboys decided they wanted to make a trade, they would obviously want to try to bring in if they were going to bring in players and not just draft picks, they would want guys that they feel like are going to fit in with this guy's defense. And he would probably vouch for some of them, maybe like a Tyreek Stevenson, maybe like a Tremaine Edmonds. But the point is you want to get rid of a guy with some money. So like, again, you can sign Micah Parsons that long-term deal. So I think a guy like Montez Sweat would make a lot of sense here because sure, do you want him to be part of this because you want him to be the guy that's alongside Micah Parsons? Yeah. But I mean, if you really think about it, like you have to trade something of value. You got to shed some money here too. This is a guy that Flutes probably would probably take in Montez Sweat to get him. So could you make a starting point like a Montez Sweat plus a first-round pick plus a 2 next year, maybe more like a 4th rounder or something like that? Maybe. Does Dallas take a deal like that? I don't know. That's kind of the whole problem here is like with Dallas from their perspective, are they going to settle for anything less than 2 firsts? And if that's the case, I'm not sure that you do it. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I mean, what do you guys think as far as cost? I want to know what you guys in the chat think about cost, like what you think it would take to get him, what you'd be willing to part with to get him, what you think a hypothetical scenario as far as both picks and players might look like. Give us your thoughts, guys. I mean, we've seen what Aldo thinks, and I think that's a really good hypothetical scenario there, a good starting point if something like that were to happen. Maybe something like that. Scroll says Jalen for Micah, and I'll think about it. I don't know that the Bears are going to move on from Jalen Johnson, and that is big money attached to it, though. So if they felt good with their secondary and they thought that was the way they were going to get him, they might. I mean, that's losing a really big piece of your defense. But like I said, they've got such a strong secondary that maybe if they do trade him to get rid of, like I said, you have to shed some money to make this happen. So bringing a guy like Parsons, is that a bad trade-off? I don't know that it is. You don't have to attach 2 first-round picks to it that way. I think that's not bad. I mean, I don't know that I would do it, but they're going to want something. They're not just going to give them away for free. So I don't know, Tim. Well, what would you think if they wanted Jalen Johnson in a trade to get Micah Parsons? Would you be hesitant?
No.
Would you think?
Or yes, I would be hesitant. I would not do it because you don't give up elite player in one position to get an elite player in a different position. The Bears, yeah, they're deep in corner, but after Jalen Johnson, there's a huge fall off, and they're not deep enough after him for me to feel good about the defensive backroom. Let's face it, we talk about the defensive backroom being as good as it is because it has Jalen Johnson in it. If he's not there, that changes everything. And an elite corner is incredibly important too. So I hear it. But is that production enough that it warrants trading away another elite player and draft capital to bring in one player? I don't think so. I don't think that would be wise. I think the only way that you make a deal for Micah Parsons is if you don't give up an elite player and you just go with picks and maybe a player swap somewhere in there. Maybe I could see a Tremaine Edmonds fine if you wanted to do that, but giving up Jalen Johnson makes no sense to me. If you want to give up Tyreek Stevenson, they can take him. You can have him because I think we've got corners coming up. They're going to be every bit as good as Tyreek Stevenson is.
Well, here's a funny comment from Aldo that I want to mention here. Would you trade Parsons and Eberflus for Dennis Allen and a first rounder? If you got to bring Flus back, you can have him. I don't want no part of that deal. But I do think it's funny that that you bring that up, but I guess, but I just think that, you would want to have a guy like Parsons. Sure, of course. I mean, to cap it off, though, at the end of the day, I really don't think anything's going to happen, both because of, number one, I don't see Dallas moving on, and number two, the cost would be I think it would be so substantial. I don't think you could make something like that happen. Scrolls says that Jalen's not Surtain or Sausgarter.
I disagree. I think Jalen Johnson's better than both of them because he's a better. Let me tell you what. Freeze. Let me finish. Freeze. Does he have the same turnover margin? Absolutely not. But nobody throws to Jalen because he's so elite in coverage.
Patrick Surtain is the best corner we have seen, to me, in at least a decade. Patrick Surtain is an incredible defensive back.
But turnovers are a big part of that.
He is night and day better than just about everybody else in the league, in my opinion. Sauce, I can kind of see your argument for Sauce. Sauce is one of those guys that I think he gets a little sticky in coverage to the point where, when I say sticky, I mean I think he gets a little handsy sometimes.
Yeah.
So, and now does he get called for it? Not a whole lot. So, I mean, he's still a productive player. So you can certainly make the argument that he's one of the top players in the league. And I wouldn't disagree with you if you said he was better than Jalen necessarily either. But Surtain, no. I mean, he's not as good as Surtain. But still,
my point is,
he would be a valuable trade piece.
Let me put it to you this way. Other teams respect Jalen Johnson more than our own fan base does. And I don't understand why.
I love Jalen Johnson.
I do too, but not everybody does.
We're talking about a hypothetical scenario here for Micah Parsons, and
no, I'm not even talking about that. A lot of people don't see what he really is for what he is. I 100% agree, and I understand that he is not a turnover guy. It's not his game, and I 100% agree with you guys. And I also think that he should not be paid like a turnover guy because he's not. But he is so elite. Yes, elite. He is elite in coverage. No quarterback and no offensive coordinator wants to throw the ball his way. They refuse to. And there's a reason for that. Because he is so good. They know. And Jalen, when the ball is thrown his way, he does tend to get his hands on the ball. But he's not seeing anything come his way. And that you can't fault the player for that. He's doing his job. And Jeff, I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. You and I have talked for years. If you don't hear a corner's name in a game, that means he's a good player. He's a great player because that means he's not giving anything up. That's what you want from your corner. So of course, I'm going to probably have a little bias because it's Jalen Johnson. He's a Bears player. But at the same time, I think Jalen Johnson is an underrated player as far as the national media and national people look at him. I don't think he gets the respect that he deserves for what kind of player he is, what he really is.
Well, I would tend to agree with you on that. I do think he's an excellent player. I just don't think, like I said, I don't think he's in that. I don't agree with you with that being on the Surtain level. And I do agree with Aldo. He still needs more turnovers because when he does get targeted, Tim, you mentioned that he makes some plays on the ball, but he gets beat sometimes too, when he gets targeted. It's not just him getting targeted and making plays on the ball. So when he does get targeted, I want him to see him make plays on it. I want to see him bait quarterbacks into throwing his way so he can make plays on it. That's what great.
I don't think that was his fault though. I think that's Eberflus' fault for not giving him the opportunity to do that.
Now, you can say that, but he never picked off any passes before Flus got there either. His most productive season as far as interceptions are concerned were under Matt Eberflus. So, I don't know that I agree with that necessarily either. I got an emergency alert here.
Right, an Amber Alert.
It's not me. No, it's a evacuation order for somebody, but it's not me. Anyways, I just like it's not a tsunami, but anyways, I just think that he's a lot of, like I said, I want to see him bait guys. Aldo says quarterbacks want to test the other corners. I have never seen JJ as a premier shutdown guy. I don't necessarily think that he's a premier shutdown guy. I think he, for the most part, gets the job done against the best guys. Yeah, but he can get beat sometimes and does. But Razzle says that Jalen's elite as they come. Don't even for a second think otherwise now. Surtain is really, really good, but so is Jalen. Yes, Jalen is really good, but Surtain's not, dude. Surtain is just on a different level than just about everybody else, dude. He just is. Jalen's excellent player. Don't get me wrong. I will not deny that. But I want to see more ball production too. I think the guys that are the best corners in the league, they find a way to get ball production, whether it be interceptions or forced fumbles. Look at Peanut Tillman. All he did was knock the ball out. He was targeted enough. Nobody gave him shit about getting targeted and having guys catch passes on him because guess what? He forced the ball out so damn much. So to me, I do think you want to see a little bit more of that. But I love Jalen. He's an excellent player. My whole point of the whole thing was that if you were to look into like a Micah Parsons trade and you're talking about players in your team who could have value and could help you get rid of a chunk of money in order to sign a guy like Micah Parsons, Jalen Johnson is one of the top guys that would top that list. So that was the whole point I was trying to make with that. Scroll says Detroit, Minnesota consistently tested Jalen and exposed him a few times. They did a few times. Yes, there were situations where I think Jordan Addison beat him a couple times pretty good in the Minnesota game. I think it was the second game. But every once in a while, it does happen. Yeah, he's a very good player for the most part. He does get beat sometimes, but they all do, So, like I said, it is what it is. He's a great player. I love having him. But the whole point, like I said, was about that. So we got to get out of here, guys. We're running out of time. Just to remind you guys, as always, we're here every Friday night. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can find us all on Extra Twitter. I'm at _Jeff Willis. You can find my partner here, Tim, at Tim Willis24. You can find our executive producer, Aldo Gandia. He is at Barroom Network. And join us throughout the week for all our content here on Barroom, guys. We got a great show coming up again on Monday, obviously, with GTF. Gabriel Talks Football. He's going to go over, I'm sure, what's going on in camp this week, and he'll give you his thoughts on the day he spent with Aldo in camp this week as well. So thanks, guys, for being here as always. And until next week, bear down.
Da Bears. Transparent. Guys, he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. That is why I have so much confidence in where this thing is going to go. Because this is not... I don't even know what that's saying. I'm reading something, guys. Sorry, but...
New and mightier foes will arise. New adventures will begin. And Goku and his fellow warriors will be ready. Until then, we bid you farewell.
The Willis Twin Towers podcast is a Barroom Network production. Jeff and Tim Willis are the co-hosts and co-producers. Aldo Gandia is executive producer. Music is licensed from Pond 5. Any copyrighted material used was done under the Fair Use Doctrine for commentary, criticism, and informative purposes. All of our programming is available in audio-only format by subscribing to the Barroom Network wherever you download podcasts. Videos are archived on YouTube.